Yesterday talked about this town in Poland. Okay, so before I get going on that, will you help me label this map, especially those of you that are geographically challenged? Okay, let's start up here. Okay, we'll call this United Kingdom. Okay, and the capital is, of course, London. Okay, now what's this body of water right here? The English Channel. Okay, guys, this is like one of the most important bodies of water in the history of the last, 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Okay, at one point this was connected. Okay, right? Eurasia, right? I read a fantastic book about 25 years ago called Sarum, and it actually dated back to when this was connected. Okay, and then when it split and how that changed British history and everything. It's really kind of a cool book, but it's a historical fiction. But anyhow, yeah, guys, this is very vital in World War II. Okay, and then of course this is France, and the capital is Paris. Paris. Okay, and then let's come over here. What do we got? Belgium. Of course, Luxembourg, Norway, Denmark, okay, here, Germany, the focus of much of our attention recently, here, and then Italy, and then this is, okay, we'll call it Czechoslovakia for World War II purposes, and then here, Poland, okay, and the capital here is Warsaw. Okay, and then we come over here. Okay, good job. All right. Now you guys see why I did the map quiz and the map homework. Okay, because this is important. And the better you know it, the easier it is for you to understand what the heck's going on. Okay, so obviously 1933, Hitler comes to power, and we get Nazi Germany, right? Okay, 1936. Remember the Rhineland? He rearms the Rhineland, this demilitarized zone in here, okay? And then in 1938, they annex Austria. Didn't have to fire a shot, right? Fifth column did its job. Okay. Then in 38 also, this region, the Sudetenland, is handed over to the Nazis by Britain, Chamberlain, right? The Munich Pact. Okay, 6 months later, his armies will invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay, so yet to fire a shot. Okay, this is where we're at. Okay, so yesterday I was talking about the world was shocked by this non-aggression pact between Hitler and Stalin, okay, and Germany and the Soviet Union. But the secret part of this pact is that the two will divide Poland. Okay, so on 9/1/39, September 1st, the Germans will invade Poland. Okay, on 9/17, roughly 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union invades here. Okay, and as I said yesterday, I think I got to this. About 90% of Polish forces' defenses were on the Western Front and only 10% on the Eastern Front. So even though the Nazis invaded first, the Soviets are going to move much more rapidly across Poland, okay, because there's not much resistance. And so our discussion today begins with the town of Jedwabne in Poland, which is just northeast of Warsaw. Now, guys, there's 3 million Jews living in Poland. So in small towns, in large towns, and cities all over Poland, you will find Jews. Every town's different, but this town is kind of unique because a town of 3,000, about one half are Jewish and the other half are Polish. Now, Poles generally tend to be Catholic. Are there some Protestants in Poland? Absolutely. Where's Pope John Paul II from? He's from Poland and growing up during this time period. Okay? So the Russians moved so quickly that they reached this town. They go too far. They're actually going into where the Nazis are supposed to occupy, but the Nazis are not there yet. Now, if you're living in Poland and you're Jewish, in September of 1939, guys, what's been going on with the Jews in Germany has been taking its toll since 1933. So it's been 6 years. In 1938, in Germany and different parts of Europe, but mostly in Germany, you get something called the Night of Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht, where Jewish synagogues, Jewish businesses are firebombed, bombed, burnt down, okay? The Night of Broken Glass. Basically telling the Jews it's time to go. Well, if you're living in Poland and you're Jewish at this time, you've heard these stories. So there's a real fear when the invasion starts on the 1st. Now everybody's afraid. The Poles are afraid. You know what I mean? They're being invaded from both sides. Everybody's scared. The Jews are scared because they live in Poland, but then there's that additional fright because of how the Germans treat Jews. So it's kind of a double whammy for Jews. This is their home. So when the Russians appear first to these people, these Jews in Jedwabne, there's a sense of relief that it's the communists and not the Germans. You can see this, right? So the reaction of the Jews in this small town was noticeable to the Poles, that the Jews were very welcoming of the communists who had just invaded their country, offering the communists, the Soviets, hospitality. You know, we're glad to see you. What can we do for you while you're here? You follow me? So the Poles in this town are kind of taken aback by that. We don't like communists. They just invaded our country, and these Jews are treating them with kindness. They didn't like that. Then the Soviets realize they've gone too far, and they leave. What happens over the next couple of days is hidden to history for 60 years. The story I'm about to tell you, nobody really outside of this town, not many outside of this town, knew what happened until after, much later after the war. Because if any of you guys that know World War II history a little bit, Germany will invade the Soviet Union. Eventually, the Soviet Union will push the Germans back and help us defeat them. But the Russians don't stop there. They continue all the way into Germany and will stay there for the next 40 years. Poland will fall under the communist jackboot for 40 years. Now, people will find out about this story when the Cold War ends and the collapse of the Soviet Union ends, or the reign of the Soviet Union in Poland ends. The archives will be opened up. This story will be told, okay? And it's told in this book here called Neighbors that I had to read in graduate school, okay? And it stuck with me because this is a horrific story. So, Russians leave. 2 days later, the German infantry starts showing up in this town. Now, the Polish forces were pushed back by the Nazis basically pulled back to Warsaw, Polish forces. And then the Germans surrounded it and destroyed what was left of the Polish army, okay? The German infantry, guys, does not deal with the Jewish problem. Their job is to kill enemy forces, not deal with Jews. There's a group that comes in behind the German infantry. That group is called the Einsatzgruppen. The Einsatzgruppen deals with the Jewish problem. So as they encounter Jews, the Einsatzgruppen, generally they would kill them. Okay, now it takes a lot of ammunition to shoot every Jew individually. There's 3 million. That's 3 million rounds of ammunition. Not to mention the toll it takes on the psyche of a human being to murder tens, hundreds, thousands of people. Okay? So the Germans had to get more efficient as time went on with their killing of Jews. Okay, so at the beginning, they would just shoot them in the head. Then, more efficiently, you could dig a long ditch, line up 5 Jews, use a high-powered rifle, shoot the first one. That bullet's going to go through the second, third, and fourth person, injure the 5th person. They all fall on top of the one that is wounded. Bodies laying on top of it, that 5th person will generally just bleed out. Then mobile killing units using tractor trailers. You would put a bunch of Jews into a trailer and gas them to death, saving ammunition and the psyche of your troops that are killing all these people. Okay. The German infantry doesn't deal with this issue. So when the Germans show up in Zimbabwe, obviously the Jews are concerned, but the Poles, who are already a little bit upset with the Jews for how they behaved with the communists, the Poles are like, well, if we're nice to the Germans, then they won't kill us. So when the Germans show up, the Poles in this town are like, hey, what do you need us to do for you? Do you want us to round up the Jews for you? Now, guys, there's good and bad apples in every large group of people. And what started with a few attacks on their Jewish neighbors, taking advantage of the chaos of war, some of the Jews started to flee as the Germans showed up. Like, they took off for the woods. But they weren't just fleeing the Germans, they were fleeing their neighbors. And it started to turn on them. Some of those Jews were killed by their neighbors. Like close to 100. They started looting their homes. Now the town leaders, they're concerned here as well. First of all, of the murders that are taking place of Jews by citizens of this town. And what to do about that. So the town leaders went to the German infantry and said, do you want us to round these people up? And they're like, no, go about your business, leave us alone. But as the Poles started killing their own neighbors, the town leaders said, we got to do something. We got to cover this up. So they took it upon themselves to round up all the Jews in the town, which is now down to about 1,200. A couple hundred escaped. Like, they took off and got out. They're the only survivors. Because once the townspeople gathered the Jews in the town square, the Germans again reject this. They're like, we wash our hands of this. We're not doing this. And so, with not knowing what to do, the town leaders directed the Jews to be placed in this large barn off the town center. They locked the doors. whole families, men, women, and children. Show you pictures of them. Whole families burned to death. Okay? When the Soviets took over, they put the leaders of this massacre on trial. The Soviets held a trial. When the Soviet Union collapsed, they opened the archives, and researchers went in and stumbled across this court case and the witness testimony that the Soviets held in the trial. Okay? And this one researcher, Jan Gross, wrote this book about it. It is a story that is now well known in Poland. Like, the people of Poland are aware of this, what happened. It's a tragic story that I think the goal of the author is to point out that in war, it is only in war that things like this happen. So I think the lesson is that let's not have war so things like this don't happen. Because no other case you're generally going to see this. Okay? It's a tragic story how one group of neighbors massacred another group of neighbors that they knew, they worked with, they went to school with, they did business together. Okay? It's a horrible story, as is the story of the Holocaust, guys. And the deeper you dig into the Holocaust, we all blame this on the Nazis. But guys, you can go to places like Lithuania, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary. As the Germans went into these countries, the citizens of these countries were complicit in helping the Jews, helping the Germans find the Jews and get rid of the Jews. It's horrifying what happened in some of these countries. And the people of those countries helped do it. It wasn't just the Germans, guys. Okay? So that's where we got to be careful, okay, about, hating people, fearing people, because they're different than we are. You understand? Okay? Now, we're not anything close to that in this country right now. You understand? I mean, we get along. But if you get a war, I mean, just look what happened here in World War II with the Japanese Americans. Some of you guys know the story about Japanese internment camps and so forth, okay? Now, we'll talk about that later and actually debate that a little bit, okay? Because there was a real fear. The fear was not unfounded of the Japanese invading the west coast of the United States. We had no defenses on our west coast, you understand? They hit us at Pearl, okay? And there was a fear they would invade, okay? So it's not totally unfounded. At least we can talk about it, right? We can't we're just going to sweep it under the rug. Let's talk about it, okay? So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I had read that book, and man, it stuck with me. And so I try and share that story with my students every year, okay? So moving forward, I don't know if we'll get to it today or not, but the last slide I have is what's called the Phony War. Okay, so it takes about 2 weeks after the Soviet invasion, Poland is defeated. So just over a month, Poland is divided. But women. So guys, there's no war, there's no fighting in Europe over the next 6 months. That's what they call the Phony War. So for the next 6 months, Hitler will begin to move his armies back across Poland using the Autobahn in Germany that he built, the highway system, to move his troops here, 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 and here, preparing for the invasion of Western Europe and Northern Europe. Okay? Hitler's ultimate goal, of course, is this, but he can't leave his western flank open. He doesn't want a two-front war. Okay? So this is what he's going to focus on next, but it will not be until April that he's ready to do that of 1940. Okay, so this is September 39. We won't see now. The British and the French declare war on Germany on the 3rd. Okay, so World War II has started. There is an air war going on. There are naval battles going on, but there's no fighting on the ground in Europe for 6 months. The Phony War. Okay, everybody with me on that? Okay, so I've got some slides here with a pretty big focus on what we refer to as Blitzkrieg. Okay, now I know I have a couple, probably 3 or 4 or 5 kind of history nerds on this in here. Okay, so that's great. And if you guys have anything, knowledge that you want to bring into this, just raise your hand and share with the class. Okay, because I don't pretend to know everything. Now I pretend to know a lot. Okay. I didn't really plan to say it like that, but it came out pretty good. All right. I get my mouse over here. I know that's on, isn't it? Yeah, that's on. I just got to get my mouse over there. Come on. Hello. Okay, I'm going this way. Should be. Oh, you see it? Yeah, you had it. Good dog. Turn the lights off. I need to turn them off anyways, right? There you are. Okay, so this is what we did. We got this yesterday. Get this yesterday? Okay, yeah. Third hour sometimes behind a little bit, but okay. So this is stuff that I just kind of talked about. Okay, so the Poles are going to fight. Now, the Poles are not prepared for this, really. They're using World War I tanks, World War I aircraft, biplanes. Okay, so when Hitler invades, he's going to use this Blitzkrieg. Now, I described Blitzkrieg on the next 2 slides in a lot of detail. Okay, I don't have it up here. I do have some pictures that allude to it. Okay, so September 1st, Hitler invades. 2 days later, Britain and France declare war. So September 3rd, which is 9-3-3-9, which is easy to remember, 9-3-3-9, okay, the start of World War II. Now, most historians use September 1st as the start of World War II. I like September 3rd because that's when Britain and France declare war, okay, and it's easier to remember. 2 weeks later, roughly, Stalin, with the Soviets, invade Poland from the east. And as I said, within 2 weeks, Poland is divided. Okay, so there will be resistance to the Germans in Poland pretty much the entirety of the rest of the war. Obviously, you guys, I don't know how much you know about this Jewish ghettos in Warsaw and other cities. There will be a couple of rebellions that take place in Warsaw against the Germans. And guys, always, in all of these countries, sabotage. Like, people will resist, okay, at their own peril in many cases, okay, but people will resist. Now, our 2 close allies, Britain and France, are now at war with Germany. What are we going to do? Okay? We are friends with Poland. They're not like a super close ally, but we're friends with them. Okay? after much debate, like, guys, if we end our embargo and we start sending supplies with our merchant ships, with munitions and weapons to our allies, we're going to start getting attacked, which is going to draw us closer to war, which people don't want. So this does take a lot of debate, but eventually they will repeal the arms embargo. So like in World War I, you're going to start to see American merchant ships braving the Atlantic Ocean to deliver supplies to our allies, which means American merchant ships are going to be hit by German U-boats. They will be sunk by German U-boats. Let me just foreshadow a little bit for you guys. During World War II, more than 4,600 ships will be sunk in the Atlantic. 4,600. Okay, almost that many in World War I. So guys, the Atlantic is littered with shipwreckage, aircraft. Lots of nice fish reefs down there, right? Okay, so as I turn our attention towards Blitzkrieg, I got two pictures here that will help aid in kind of explaining that, okay? Blitzkrieg means lightning war, or lightning warfare, or lightning from the sky. It's all built around air power and speed of your army, okay? I've been talking about infantry. Infantry are your guys that are going in to fight, to kill the enemy. They will be aided by the air for the Germans' case here. Now, if you look at this middle picture here, see a column of German tanks. Okay, the Germans had two types of tanks. They had Panzer tanks. They also had Tiger tanks. And there's variations of all of these that would improve as the war went on. Now, guys, these are quality tanks. They're fast, and they have very good armor. So in comparison to the American Sherman tank, these are way better. Okay, you can actually have a Sherman tank shell, like you fire a shell from one of our tanks, literally bounce off the German tanks. Okay, you put angles on your armor, okay, to help deflect. Now, if you had a one-on-one between an American Sherman and a German Tiger tank, the Sherman's going to lose almost every time. But if you have 5 Sherman tanks versus 1 German tank, you got a fighting chance. We produced way more tanks than the Germans did. And we sold a lot of our tanks to Britain. Okay? And we had to, because a lot of them were destroyed. Okay? Now, our tanks got better as the war went on as well. You live and learn, right? I mean, it's about survival. Okay? This is why smart people are important. Seriously. You got to have smart people to figure out and solve these problems, called engineers. Now, over here, you have a column of motorcycles with sidecars. Now, each one of these motorcycles with sidecars can carry 3 troops. So you got the guy driving, guy in a sidecar. You can have one guy propped up standing behind the driver of the motorcycle. Okay. You've got trucks here. These are troop carrier trucks. Okay. Fast-moving tanks, trucks, armored personnel carriers, motorcycles. You've got a fast-moving infantry. Okay. Now, this plane over here, does anybody know what this plane is called? Check your knowledge, my World War II guys. The what? Yeah. No. I'll show you that on the next slide. That's on the next slide. This is the Junkers. No, it's the Stuka dive bomb. Okay. Now, these planes are infamous from World War II. Okay. By the way, guys, I'm sorry. I apologize ahead of time. You might can tell from my classroom that one of my favorite subjects is aviation and World War II aviation, to be Exactly. Okay. So you're going to learn like way more information about aircraft in World War II than you really need to know, but hopefully you'll find it as interesting, almost as interesting as I do. Okay. This plane, okay, dive bombers, we had them, the Japanese had them, obviously the Germans had them, the British had them. Okay. Dive bombers come in a steep dive, straight down almost, okay? They drop their ordnance. These are very accurate because of the steep dive. They can hit their targets. These will destroy tanks. These will destroy enemy artillery. So as your army is about to go in, you send these in first, and they are going to loosen up the enemy for you. Okay? These are distinct because they actually had a whistle built into the wing. So they're very loud when they go into their dive. It's going to scare the bejesus out of you, man. Okay, these come in, and I'll have some video clips of this. Okay, in the next day or two. So these are very famous aircraft, fixed wheels. Okay, they don't go up into the plane, and a very loud and devastating aircraft. Okay, so cities in Poland will end up looking like this. Cities in France, cities in Belgium, cities in London or in Britain, and Russia will look like this because of this, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. Okay. The insignia for the German Luftwaffe is this. So you will see that on their aircraft. Okay, the insignia for the American aircraft is a star, and for the Soviets, a red star. And I don't know why the British did this, but they put a target on their plane. Okay, so I'm going to take you to the back. Well, let me go one more slide and show you this other aircraft. Okay, these other aircraft. So again, Blitzkrieg, there's a definition for you. And two aircraft here. Here's a good picture of the motorcycle and sidecar. Okay. Panzer tank, armored personnel carrier. And then this is your Messerschmitt. Okay. You have variations of this, BF 109, the ME 109, the ME 110, and so forth. Okay. Variations of that German fighter plane. Okay. Fighters are different than dive bombers. Generally, these fighters do not carry ordnance. They carry machine guns. Okay. And then this, guys, is the Junkers 88. This is the large German bomber. Okay. So these bombers can be used to strike at the heart of the enemy. These things go over, coastal areas. They go over rivers. They go over mountain ranges. They go over armies and can strike at the heart of an enemy. Okay. Throw this at you. Check out your knowledge of military tactics. You're sending your Junkers 88 pilot, German pilot. You are about to invade Poland or France or Belgium. It's the first target. These are high-level bombers. It's your first target that you're going to try and take out with the heavy bombers. What's that? Airfields? Yes. You want to take out the enemy aircraft. If you can take out their aircraft on the ground, Surprise them, even better. There's no way to shoot down these bombers for most European countries other than fighter planes. So enemy bombers come over your land. How do you shoot them down? Well, you got to send your fighter planes up there to try and shoot them down. Guys, Belgium, Poland, Denmark, they don't have air defense systems. Britain will. The French do, but they're not very good. And the Germans have air defense systems. Okay? So if you can take out enemy aircraft, you have what's called air superiority. Yes. Okay? Both literally and figuratively, you have air superiority. You control the skies. Okay? So that's what the Germans will do, is try and take out enemy airfields. Then, of course, you're going after things like infrastructure, factories that are building weapons. Now, you may not want to take out the oil fields because you might want to use them once you take over the country. Okay? But if you're in a long, drawn-out battle, you're probably going to want to destroy their energy. Okay? Like they'll want to do with the Russians. Okay. Well, the Russians will take care of that soon. Okay. So, all right, we're going to go to the back of the room. Okay, so the Junkers 88, the German bomber, is right here. Now, comparison in size, this is a much smaller bomber than what the British will have, what the Americans will have, what the Japanese will have. Okay? But they can mass produce these, and they do. Okay? Above it is the Stuka dive bomb. Okay? Which is notorious in this war. And then this is a Messerschmitt Bf-109. Like I said, there's different variations. These are the three main German aircraft. Okay? Now, just in comparison, let me show you the American bombers. Okay, so this is probably the most famous bomber of the Americans, for the Americans in the war, and that's the B-17. Okay, there are still around 20 of these that are airworthy, that people own in the United States and fly them. $350, $400. You can go up for a ride for 45 minutes in one of them. Okay, it's on my bucket list. Okay, now. Above it here is the B-24. Now, did any of you guys read Unbroken? Okay. They describe this plane as trying to fly a tank. It's not a good aircraft. A lot of crashes. Like, you don't have to shoot these down. They're going down on their own. Not a good plane. Okay. Now, the B-25 is a smaller bomber. And we'll talk a lot about this aircraft, okay, because this one's going to play a big role, okay. So B-25 Mitchell, there's different variations of this bomber as well, okay. The biggest British bomber is the Lancaster, the one in the top middle, okay. So in comparison to the British bomber versus the German bomber, you see a pretty big difference, okay. Now, as far as the fighter planes go, we're still a ways from being in this war, okay? So probably the best American fighter by the end of the war was the P-51 Mustang. And there's a guy in Wichita that owns one, okay? And flies it from time to time. Now, I failed to mention this one. This is the B-29, okay? Now, have you seen this before? How many of you guys have seen the B-29 Doc flying above Wichita? It's amazing, guys. It's like history in our skies over Wichita. It's the only one airworthy in the world. There were none of these flying until veterans of the war, veterans of the home front, decided we need to rebuild a B-29. And one of the people that was instrumental in that was Mrs. Nielsen, our president's mother, Connie. Have any of you guys ever met Connie Pankowitz? She's about this tall. little Hispanic woman. She's 95. And she's still getting after it. What a wonderful woman. Okay? Connie helped build the B-29 in Wichita. She lived in Newton, and she would get on a bus every day and drive down to Wichita and work on the B-29, then go back to Newton. Okay? Connie and so many others helped build this war machine. This is the only pressurized aircraft on this map. All the other ones, you hit 10,000 feet when you're on a regular passenger jet, you'll hear ding, a bing, you hit 10,000 feet. When you're landing, coming down, you hit 10,000 feet, you'll hear bing, you're at 10,000 feet. Okay? Because above 10,000 feet, what? You can't breathe. The air's too thin. Okay? So if you're in a B-17 at 20,000 feet in the wintertime, flying over Germany for 8 hours in an open cockpit situation, you're wearing oxygen masks and a heated suit, gloves, hats, because it's freaking cold, man. I mean, brutal conditions for these bombers. Okay? Am I on time? All right, we'll pick up from there. I still got some more planes to talk about.